Last month, on our nation's sports show, we previewed the upcoming NFL regular season. Previewing every division inside the NFC and the AFC's conferences. On each episode, we made our predictions on who we think is going to win the respective divisions. On tonight's edition of our nation's sports show, we make our predictions on who we think is going to make the playoffs. What teams will barely miss the playoffs and be on the outside looking in? What teams will play spoiler to the teams that are fighting desperately to make the playoffs? What teams will be at the bottom of the barrel this season? What team is going to shock the NFL world? Who will be this year's Cleveland Browns? Who is going to make it to Championship Sunday? And who will reach the pinnacle of the NFL, the Super Bowl? Super Bowl 56 at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. And breaking news this week in the NFL as the New England Patriots have cut quarterback Cam Newton. What quarterbacks will be next on the chopping block? The nation speaks to you next. From the gridiron to the court, talking all that is sports. Members of the Buzzard of a Nation bring to you our nation's sports show. Here are your hosts, Joey Thornton and Stephen Wyand.
Hey, Steven, you're muted, boy.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of our nation's sports show, live here on YouTube. What is going on, everybody? I am once again your host for this evening, Stephen Wonder Wyand. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? And we are here to bring you another action-packed episode of Talking Sports. As a matter of fact, once again, we are covering the National Football League. And that is right, because tonight we make our predictions on who we think is going to make it to the playoffs, win their divisions, who's going to miss the playoffs, and who is going to be the team that shocks the NFL this season. But before we do that, let me plug our social media platforms. You can follow us on Twitter at ON_sports show and Facebook.com/Nations Sports Show. And enough of me jabbing along. Let me introduce to you the co-host for today. This dude right here. I've known this dude for, 10, 11 years. And we used to sit in the cafeteria at Richmond Senior High in high school. And man, we've had some great talks talking about sports, football, basketball with our good buddy Kevin Rory, who, as you guys all know, has been on this show before. But this gentleman right here, he is a Washington fan. He is the one, the only Joey Thornton. Joey, what's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. How about all you sports fans out there? How's it going out there for y'all?
Oh man, it's gonna be great, man. I figure, I was trying to find some people to do the show with me this week, and I'm like, man, who can I find? I said, you know what? Let me ask a fellow Washington fan, a fellow football fan himself, a guy who knows his football just like Kevin does. And man, we've had some great conversations over the years talking sports, man. So
Yes,
yeah,
we have. Yes, we have. It was a trifecta. It was always you, me, and Kev sitting in that cafeteria talking sports till the bell rang.
oh yeah, sitting there, probably our food got cold, just talking sports. Oh my goodness, man. It's gonna be one of those nights, man. It's gonna be awesome, man. So before we get into our predictions of who we think is gonna make the playoffs, as I told you before we went live, we last month covered every division from top to bottom in the NFC and the AFC. So I want to start out with the NFC. We're going to start out with the NFC North and the NFC South. Last year was a crazy year for football because the pandemic was going on. And it was just one of those times that, football was unpredictable because we didn't know who was going to be the teams. I mean, we had a feeling that some of the teams were going to be great no matter what, like Kansas City, with them being the defending champions last year. And of course, the unknown of Tom Brady going to Tampa Bay last year and their struggles at first. But in the NFC last year, Green Bay dominated the NFC conference, going 13-3 last year. Aaron Rodgers was the MVP, throwing 48 touchdowns, had one hell of a year, and he was the MVP, obviously, last year, and went on to take his Green Bay Packers to the NFC title game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in January. And so we'll start out with the NFC North. How do you think the NFC North is going to be this year with all those teams, Chicago, Minnesota, Green Bay, and Detroit?
Well, I will say that going into this season, I honestly did not know if Aaron Rodgers was actually going to even play for Green Bay this year because of all the chaos that was going on around his area. Because he kept NFL fans, he kept coaches, he kept players, he kept them on the ropes for weeks and weeks and weeks. And nobody even knew if he was going to leave Green Bay and go to a new place or just call it a career altogether. So, I mean, that right there was a big storyline all by itself.
That's right. That's right. I mean, just like with Green Bay last year. I mean, the year that he had, and then after they lost the championship game against Tampa Bay, he was like, "Oh, I don't know what I'm going to do," and that was kind of frustrating me, honestly, because I know, I know a lot of people out there know that I've ranted and raved on Aaron Rodgers in the offseason because I was so sick and tired of his antics, and all this stuff, and just thinking about this, now that he's coming back finally after something like an eternity. And he said, "Oh, if I'm going to come back, I'm going to bring back one of my favorite weapons, Randall Cobb." And Randall Cobb obviously rejoined Green Bay in the offseason. And yeah, it's going to be rather interesting to see how Green Bay is going to be this year, like you said. I mean, who knows? I mean, Rodgers hasn't been back for long. He's been back for a couple of months. And I think it is Green Bay's division to lose. I think they're going to win the division again. I think Chicago is an interesting story because Andy Dalton coming in after leaving Dallas last year when Prescott went down with the season-ending injury. And, oh, my goodness. I mean, Justin Fields, I mean, my goodness. The Bears fans are corralling around him like I know our boy Ezra in Chicago, near Chicago. He is a Bears fan himself. And Lance Meadow last week on our Nation Sports Show was like, "Yeah, Ezra, I know you are clamoring for Justin Fields to be the starting quarterback of Chicago because he's the fresh new toy, the fresh new ingredient onto the Chicago offense, and he's a rookie." But I agree with Lance. I think Andy needs to be the starting quarterback for Chicago because he is a veteran. He's been in the playoffs. He's been in positions to succeed, and he had with Cincinnati and AJ Green and all those guys. And Minnesota to me is an interesting team because Kirk Cousins has had one of those he's had some seasons where he's been good, and then last year he was inconsistent. And if Adam Thielen can stay healthy, if Dalvin Cook can stay healthy, I think Minnesota could have a pretty good year. But Detroit, they're Detroit. And Detroit's going to suffer, I think, another bad season this year. I mean, yeah, they got Goff at quarterback, but that trade did not work out to me for Detroit. I think the Rams won that trade big time. But anyways, and then we're going to move on to the NFC South for you. Obviously, Drew Brees announced his retirement in the offseason. And now the question is, who's going to be the starting quarterback? And it looks like it's going to be Jameis Winston. I mean, my goodness. I mean, he is the only valuable quarterback that can start, because Taysom Hill is not a reliable number one starting quarterback, because all he really does, he's a running quarterback. And I mean, can Winston pass? Yes, but mostly to the wrong freaking team. I mean, my goodness. I mean, he had 32, 33 35 touchdowns, 33 interceptions a season ago. That's insane. That's why a couple years ago, that's insane, because that's why that's why he wasn't even starting for Tampa Bay last year, because they couldn't trust him. And that's why they brought in Brady. They said, if we're going to have a quarterback that can throw the ball, it's going to be Brady. And obviously, look what happened there. 7th Super Bowl for the Bucks, or for Brady, excuse me, and the 2nd for the Bucks. But so who do you have winning in the NFC South this year? Because it's going to be interesting, because Carolina got Sam Darnold, and the Bucks, to me, are the team to beat, not only in the NFC South, but in the NFC conference itself, because they are the defending Super Bowl champions, and they have brought back every single starter on that football team.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. This is really Tampa Bay's decision to lose. I mean, Tampa Bay has really exceeded expectations ever since Tom Brady signed with them last year. Look what it did last year. They made Patrick Mahomes and the fools in the Super Bowl. I mean, imagine making a young superstar like Patrick Mahomes feel like a fool. Almost kind of reminds me of the Super Bowl back from 2015, in which the Denver defense made Cam Newton look like an absolute fool. But yeah, I mean, this is Tampa Bay all the way. I mean, New Orleans, they have the looks of a good team, but with Michael Thomas being out at least until week 8 this season due to him being on the PUP list, and Alvin Kamara, I mean, he's a great running back. I will say that. Kamara is a great back. However, he can't carry the whole offense by himself. And Jameis, he needs to cut down on his interceptions, because if he don't, then the Saints ain't going to really go much of anywhere this year. Now, as far as Carolina is concerned, they must have a lot of trust with Sam Darnold, because if he comes in and plays like he did with the Jets, he's going to be the laughing stock of that whole stadium. Because Darnold had the playmakers, and he had the players in New York that he could make into superstars, but it's just he was never really consistent. And yeah, I mean, he's in a better environment now with Carolina, and of course we got the hotshot running back Christian McCaffrey finally back for hopefully back for a full season, I should say. And Atlanta, Matt Ryan, I mean, he's been the guy for Atlanta ever since he got drafted. And yeah, he doesn't have one of his hot shot receivers anymore in Julio Jones, but he's got Calvin Ridley out there. He's got Mike Davis there in the backfield.
Yep.
So, I mean, but New Orleans, Carolina, and Atlanta cannot hold a candle to Tampa Bay this year. And as much as I hate to say it, Tampa Bay is going to win the division again because of 2 words: Tom Brady.
That's right, because Tom Brady has constantly been successful no matter where he goes. And I think that question can now be answered. Tom Brady was, to me, I know Belichick is great, but Tom Brady had the drive, the passion to get better in the rooms. the training rooms and in the study rooms, for film, watching himself play and how can I get better at this and get better at that. And look what Brady's done over the past 20, 21 years of his career. He's been successful, 7 Super Bowls, 14, if I'm not mistaken, 14 or 15 championship games. That's insane. And Lance Meadows said it last week, and we all said it last week. Tampa Bay, to me, has the best chance right now to repeat as Super Bowl champions later on this year because they brought back every starter. And the scary part about it is Brady had a full off season to put in the work with his receivers, with his offensive line, with the running backs, everybody. And I think Tampa Bay this year is the team to beat in the NFC. And now we're going to switch over to the
absolutely.
And now we're going to switch over to the NFC East, and then we'll switch to the NFC West. And the NFC East, to me, is the most wide open division right now because it's proof last year. Philadelphia, Washington, New York, and Dallas. Nobody finished with an above 500 record. It was a abysmal division. And that last game at the end of the season last year between Washington and Philadelphia subbed up everything about that division and about that game. That was one of the worst played football games of all time. It was that bad. It was really bad. And just thinking about this division, and I hope Prescott can stay healthy because when the dude's healthy, he's a very solid quarterback, and he is their franchise quarterback. But I think what Dallas needs to do this year to get back to being successful is run the ball, pound the rock. Because Ezekiel Elliott, when he is healthy, Elliott is one of the best running backs in the NFL. And those receivers, my goodness, Cooper, need I say more? Man, Dallas has a really good offensive line, good receivers, good running backs. And I think if they stay consistent and they keep their foot on the gas, I think Dallas is going to win the division this year. How do you think the NFC East is going to fare out this year?
Well, you pretty much said it yourself with your open statement. The NFC East is the most wide open division out of any other division in the National Football League this year. Now, the Giants, they have playmakers. I mean, they got Daniel Jones back there with quarterback. They got Saquon Barkley back there. They got the rookie out of Florida, Kadarius Toney, out there who's going to be catching passes from Daniel Jones. But the Giants, I see them performing no better than, let's say, 4-13, 5-12 maybe this year. Because the Giants have the playmakers, but they're not consistent. Now, Philly, they just committed to naming Jalen Hurts as starting quarterback for week 1. Now, that may be a controversial decision because Jalen Hurts is a great player, but he really has nobody to throw to other than maybe Zach Ertz. And Philly doesn't have a decent running attack. So I don't see Philly going anywhere.
No.
Now with Washington, they made a lot of splash in the free agency market. They signed Ryan Fitzpatrick to a 1-year deal. They brought in Curtis Samuel on a 3-year deal.
Mm-hmm.
And not to mention, they went out and plucked who was probably the best safety in the NFL right now in William Jackson III and put him back at safety. And not to mention that defensive line led by Chase Young, Montez Sweat, and Matt Ioannidis. I mean, that right there speaks volumes. Dallas, I mean, you pretty much said it yourself. Dak Prescott is an elite quarterback. I can't take that away from him. And he's got the playmakers. He's got Amari Cooper to throw to. He's got CeeDee Lamb to throw to. He's got Ezekiel Elliott to hand the ball off to. Yep. But there's one thing that I've learned about the game of football itself. It's the fact that offense wins games, but defense wins championships.
That's
And
right.
championships includes division titles. So with that being said, I'm going with Washington. I think they're going to repeat this year,
Really?
mainly because of how strong our defense looks this year. Because I mean, think
Okay.
about it. You got Chase Young, you got Montez Sweat, you got Matt Ioannidis, you got boy Don Payne, you got that amazing safety William Jackson III. I mean,
Mhm.
Washington defense has the playmakers, and Ron Rivera has really been drilling those players. He has drilled them day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out. So there is no question that combined with the offense, I think Washington's going to do a repeat this year.
That is an interesting take to me, and that's a hot take in my opinion. Woo, sticking to your guns. I love it. So, and now we're going to switch to the NFC West. We all basically said it's going to be the toughest division in the NFC to win because we were all picking Seattle or the Rams that had the best chance, or maybe Arizona. Yeah, those are our three teams that we had. And some people said San Francisco, and even not me and Kevin are San Francisco fans. The biggest thing with San Francisco is they have to stay healthy. That's what killed them last year. Is Garoppolo going down with the injury and Bosa going down with the injury? I mean, a lot of players on that team went down with significant injuries and keeping them out of the out of the season last year, and that's how they missed their chance of getting to the playoffs. And that's why the Rams made it. That's why Seattle made it last year. And to me, it's the toughest division. I mean, you got a guy. I mean, obviously you got Russell Wilson back there at quarterback, elite quarterback, top 10 quarterback, still good to this very day. Hard to believe the dude's been there since 2012. It's insane how Wilson still continues to be, good. But the problem with Seattle, they have the offensive weapons, but their offensive line is it's really thin, very thin, because you got to have an offensive line to protect your quarterback. It doesn't matter what quarterback you are. It doesn't matter if you're Sam Darnold, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes. Does not matter. Does not matter because you need an offensive line to protect your quarterback. If you don't have an offensive line to block for you, you're not going to have enough time to read the routes down the field and to read the defense. And Matthew Stafford, to me, is the wild card in this division because now he goes to the Los Angeles Rams in the trade in the offseason this year, and he has all them weapons to throw to. Oh my goodness. I mean, the Rams are loaded. Cup, Woods, all of those receivers. I mean, their defense with Aaron Donald. I mean, my goodness, dude's an elite defender, won defensive player of the year last year. And I think I'm kind of torn between the Rams and Seattle to win the division this year. But Arizona, to me, is an interesting team this year. Very interesting team because Murray being, there again, can he be consistent, this year? Last year, he was pretty good last year. But now that he's got AJ Green back there on the outside to throw to, he still has his favorite target DeAndre Hopkins to throw to, and adding the defensive player. And when he's healthy, J.J. Watt is the best at what he does. And I think Arizona this year could have a chance to be one of those two wildcard teams. How do you think who do you think is going to win the division in the NFC West?
Well, it could be any of the four teams out there. I mean, it could be Los Angeles, it could be Seattle, it could be Arizona, it could be San Francisco. But I will start out by saying that as long as San Francisco players do not slip on the turf this year like they did last year,
Right.
they should be able to stay healthy.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, Los Angeles has brought in Matthew Stafford.
Yep.
Definitely one of the biggest trades that we saw in the NFL offseason. Definitely one of the biggest ones. And you put him back there with Cup and Woods to throw to. I mean, Stafford, he put up some big numbers in Detroit.
He did.
So So it'll be interesting to see if he can do the same thing in Los Angeles.
Yep.
Now, Arizona. I mean, I kind of had my doubts about Kyler Murray at first, but seeing as how he went out and played last year, and not to mention he's brought in, like you said, AJ Green. I mean, yes, AJ Green hasn't really played much over the past year, year and a half because of injuries,
Right.
but with him in a new environment like Arizona, also with Murray having DeAndre Hopkins to throw to, and of course, like you said, JJ Watt, who is unquestionably the leader of that defense now. I mean, Arizona could be a wild card threat. They really could be a wild card threat. Now, San Francisco, uh, they've had quite the quarterback battle going on between Jimmy G and Trey Lance.
Yes, they have.
Now, I mean, Trey Lance has obviously done better in the preseason, but that's because he's the rookie. Coach is trying to get his feet wet and everything. But I see Jimmy Garoppolo starting week 1 for
I think
sure
so too.
because Garoppolo has the experience. I mean, look who Garoppolo played under. Look who he was able to study from in the first several years of his career. You might know the guy. His name is Tom Brady. I
Yeah,
mean,
I think I know that guy. Yeah. Mm.
Jimmy Garoppolo learned from literally one of the best players in the game for so many years. So
Mm-hmm.
you better believe that he's going to use what he learned from Tom Brady to adapt more to the San Francisco offense. And not to mention, not only does he have the great playmakers to throw to, he also has two great running backs and Raheem Mostert and the rookie from Ohio State, Trey Sermon, to hand off to.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you about that San Francisco defense.
Oh my
I
goodness.
mean,
It's loaded.
you got Bosa back there. You got I'm trying to think of the other defensive end, but anyway, the I believe the unquestionable leader of that San Francisco defense is the one, the only linebacker, Fred Warner. He made sure that he was where he needed to be last year. He
Yep.
made tackles. He forced fumbles. He popped players' helmets off because he knew how to hit so hard.
We did.
I mean, San Francisco, as long as they can stay healthy, which includes not slipping on the turf, they could be a really good threat this year.
Absolutely.
Now Seattle. Of course, you got the man, Russell Wilson, came in the league back in 2012, and he's been lighting up Seattle ever since, which is kind of interesting because Seattle has been known to have a lot of rain, but Russell Wilson has brought the sunshine to Seattle over the past almost 10 years. And he's got probably one of the best 1-2 punches and wide receivers to throw to this year in Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Lockett, he's had some trouble with injuries. He has had some injury issues. But if Lockett can stay healthy, he and Metcalf can easily form the best 1-2 wide receiver punch in the NFC West.
Absolutely.
And that defense, oh man, don't even get me started about Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner, oh man.
Tell me about it. He's good.
So this is going to be a very competitive division. I think though that Seattle is going to win, but you cannot count out San Francisco or Arizona. But I'm going with Seattle to win the division this year.
Interesting. So now we're going to switch over to the AFC side of things, and we'll start out first with the AFC North. This, to me, is the toughest division out of all the divisions. It is the most competitive division, with the exception of one team, the Cincinnati Bengals. You got the Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Ravens. And I cannot believe that I'm fixing to say this, but yes, folks, the Cleveland Browns. And to me, the Cleveland Browns are a for real team this year because they're going to prove, in my opinion, that they're not going to be the laughing stock of the NFL again because they have a leader at quarterback in Baker Mayfield and the 1-2 punch at running back with Chubb and with Hunt. And you got Landry back there, out there on the outside, to throw to at the receiver spot. And it's just, oh my goodness. I mean, Kevin Stefanski has really done a great job with this Cleveland organization and getting his guys to believe. And I think Baker Mayfield has a lot to do that with as well, because last year he believed in everybody, even when Odell went out with the injury last year, he still believed in every guy on that football team because that's the kind of player I think Mayfield is. Now, I think the thing about with him that worries me the most is he's good. Don't get me wrong, but he's got to prove that he's consistent for another consecutive year because Patrick Mahomes of the AFC West did that. He's in his first year, obviously in 2018 with Kansas City, he was the MVP and threw 50 touchdowns for Kansas City, took the Chiefs to the AFC Championship game and was one penalty away from basically, that was called. If that penalty wasn't called, Kansas City would have gone to the Super Bowl that year against the Rams. And I think that it's gonna be one of those years, at Cleveland this year. If they can stay healthy, if their team can be consistent, Baker Mayfield, if he can play consistent, I think he can have another good year for Cleveland. And I think Cleveland this year, and I'll ask you this before we get to what you think with this division. Their first game, September 12th, is against the Kansas City Chiefs. To me, it's the first game of the year. Yes, I know that. We all know this. But I think the first game against Kansas City, this is going to be a game that says a lot about how Cleveland could possibly be this year because you're facing a heavyweight team in Kansas City of Patrick Mahomes. Do Cleveland have a chance to win this game? Can they beat Kansas City?
Oh boy. Let's see. Can they beat Kansas City? Yes. Can anybody beat Kansas City? Absolutely, because each NFL team is just as vulnerable as their opponents are.
That's right.
Anything can happen at any time in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, the Browns, they have a legitimate chance to win this game because, like you said, Baker Mayfield, he has really made strides ever since he got drafted first overall. I mean, Mayfield is pretty much almost in a league of his own. I mean,
really is.
before Mayfield came to Cleveland, Cleveland was considered the laughing stock, and I mean the laughing stock of the entire NFL. I mean, Cleveland has not been legitimate since the Bernie Kosar days.
That's right.
But then Baker Mayfield comes in from Oklahoma. He gets his feet wet the first season, doesn't really do good. But the more he has studied the playbook, the more he has watched video, the more adaptations he has put in, the more circumstances, not really circumstances, but consequences he has put on himself. Baker Mayfield is making people say, Bernie who?
Right.
And Odell, he may have gone down with that ACL last year, but you best believe that Odell is not giving up this season without a fight. Because Odell, you're looking at the man who can make one-handed catches in his sleep.
That's right.
And Jarvis Landry, he has really done a lot for Cleveland ever since he was brought over a few years back. So, Cleveland has a legitimate chance to beat Kansas City. Now, do I think they will beat KC? No. However, I think it's going to be a very close game.
Interesting. So yeah, and I think Cleveland this year is going to prove that they are a legitimate team this year. And I think it does start on the first game against Kansas City, win, lose, no matter what. Cleveland is here to stay, and I think Cleveland is going to have a great year this year. And so with this division, with the exception because we know it's not going to be Cincinnati, it's not. It's going to be Baltimore, Pittsburgh, or Cleveland because Pittsburgh has been basically the kings of that division for years. Baltimore won the division a couple years ago with Lamar Jackson being the MVP that year. Last year, Lamar Jackson had his ups and downs. At first, he was not doing so great, and then Baltimore, out of nowhere, like an RKO and a diamond cutter, bang, got hot, scorching hot. And Baltimore raveled off 5-6 wins in a row on the route to the playoffs. And they defeated Tennessee in the wild card game. And that was a great game. That was a well-played game by both teams. And so I think that, and then on the next week, they went on to face Buffalo in the divisional round. And, well, 2 words for you. Pick six. That changed the rest of that game. They were driving down the end zone. Baltimore's got a chance to take the lead. And then the kaboom, an earth-shattering kaboom happened. Pick six happened, and Baltimore was basically defeated the rest of the game. It was over by that moment with the pick six going up 10-3 for Buffalo. So, how do you think Baltimore is going to do this year? I think that it depends solely on Jackson and if he really, really practiced hard enough. Because I think that was the problem that Jackson had last season is he was the MVP, the talk of the town, the talk of the team, the talk of the league in 2019. He was the big dog in the yard. And that didn't fare so well for him in that playoff game against Tennessee because Tennessee smacked the living piss out of him and they blew Baltimore out in that game. And Jackson was humbled and he looked very mortal and vulnerable, like you said, because any team can be beaten on any given Sunday. And how do you think Jackson is going to do this season for Baltimore?
Jackson had a great first year. Little subpar second year.
Yep.
However, I think this is the year that Jackson's going to bounce back because now that Jackson has had 2 full years in the NFL, he knows what he's going up against. He knows how to read defenses. He knows the playbook. He knows the playbook in his mind.
Right.
Lamar Jackson is a dual threat. He always will be a dual threat. However, Baltimore lost a huge player this past Saturday night whenever they lost J.K. Dobbins for the season because of the ACL.
That's right.
That was a huge loss for Baltimore. I mean, Dobbins was going to come in this year and just light up secondaries, light up D lines, light up defenses in particular.
Right.
But for Dobbins to go out like he did against Washington in that preseason game,
huge loss.
That pretty much leaves Lamar Jackson and Gus Edwards to be the running backs for Baltimore this year. I mean, Baltimore is going to have a great season. I will say that because Jackson, I mean, he's the truth. I mean, he knows where he's supposed to be at all times. He knows where to throw the ball. He knows how to throw the ball. He knows how to use his legs. So, I mean, Lamar Jackson's going to have a great year. And also with the fact that he has Mark Andrews there to help him out with his to help him out at the tight end spot, and not to mention trying to remember his name. I can't remember his first name, but his last name is Brown. I think it's Marquise Brown or something like that. But having Brown over there at the wide receiver position, that's going to be a plus for Lamar Jackson. I mean, And that defense, I would say that defense looks pretty stout to me. I mean, yeah, it's not going to feature the big bad monster Ray Lewis and Ed Reed back there, but as far as winning the division, it's going to come down to either Baltimore or Cleveland. Pittsburgh,
Ooh, interesting.
Pittsburgh, they have the playmakers, but Big Ben is pretty much going to be on his way out before too long.
And honestly, Joey, I'm very surprised that Big Ben did not retire after last year because, man, last year when Pittsburgh had their hot start to the year, I mean, even if they're 11-0, I sat there and I said, there is no way. There's no way. Are they really that good? The record says 11-0. Yes, they're undefeated, but to me, they were not that great because they were beating the competition that they were supposed to be. What was going to show them how great of a team they were supposed to be is could they hang with the heavyweights? And that didn't happen last year. I mean,
Exactly. And let me ask you, who was the team to expose Pittsburgh's undefeated season and make them look like fools for Pittsburgh's first L last year? I'll tell you who. It was my boys from Washington.
yes, it was. And if you remember that game,
It
and
was my boys
I know
from
you,
Washington.
I know you remember that game very well because I remember listening to that game on the radio. And I was listening to it on Sirius XM, and I'm sitting there going, "What are you doing? You're up by 14 points in the second half in the fourth quarter. You're throwing the ball. Run the freaking ball. I mean, my God. I mean, yeah, that was terrible. And then Ben with the interception that he threw in the fourth quarter. You're asking for it. And Washington came back and they won the game.
But yeah, the AFC North is going to be a competitive division. Yeah, over in Cincinnati, Joe Burrow might have a teammate Jamar Chase to throw to, but it's going to come down to Baltimore and Cleveland.
That is an interesting take because I mean,
Baltimore and Cleveland, they are going to fight tooth and nail in that division. Whoever wins that division, it's going to be one of those two. I will say that, but whoever wins that division, the team that will be in second place will finish one game behind. It's going to be that close, I think.
you got a good point. You got a very valid point. I mean, and going back to Pittsburgh real quick, Pittsburgh last year after losing to Washington, they get slaughtered by Buffalo on Sunday Night Football, big time. And Allen went perfect in that third quarter. Went like 8 for 8 for like 67 yards or something like that, and a touchdown, no interceptions. And that right there spoke volumes for that game, how it was going to go. And then they made it to the wild card, or they made it to the playoffs. They won the division. Yeah, they lost to Cleveland in that and that at the end of the regular season. I'm like, well, even though they barely lost, this right here could say a whole heck of a lot about Pittsburgh because in that wild card game, dude, I'm gonna be honest with you, and let's see if you agree with this. That game between Cleveland and Pittsburgh in the wild card round this past season reminded me of Super Bowl 48 between the Denver Broncos and the Seattle Seahawks. Why is that? Because one play changed the entire game, and it was Roethlisberger's first fumble of the game. And Cleveland went on.
I absolutely agree with you there. That fumble by Ben Roethlisberger, that was costly.
Very costly.
That game right there pretty much gave Cleveland the golden ticket to compete not only in the playoffs last year, but the season and the playoffs this year. I mean, Cleveland now has that golden ticket because Pittsburgh, they've had their time in the spotlight. They've had playmakers like Jerome the Bus Bettis, Hines Ward, Antoine Randall, Troy Polamalu, they had their time in the spotlight. But now it's time for Pittsburgh to take a step back and let Cleveland and Baltimore fight tooth and nail in this division.
Very interesting. So, with that being said, do you think Pittsburgh? Oh, well, look at that as a teaser. Look at that as a teaser when we get to that with the playoff predictions. So, we're going to switch over now to the AFC South, and this division to me is an interesting division because you have Carson Wentz. Yes, he's injured right now for the Colts, but when he is healthy, I think he might bring some spark to Indianapolis this season when he's healthy. But the team to me that unquestionably is the team to beat in the AFC South is the Tennessee Titans. Ryan Tannehill. And one monster of a running back. I can't even call him a running back. He's more like a freaking, truck at this point because he can just run somebody over. I mean, Derrick Henry, the dude is a freaking monster at running back. 6'5", I think, or something like that. 250 pounds, whatever the heck. Just big boy. Running people's asses over and just scoring touchdowns and knocking over defenders. And even when there's not a hole, he can find a crease and get to where he needs to get down the field and find the open lane to get down the field and get a lot of yards and stuff. But the Houston Texans, yeah. They're not going to be good this year. And Jacksonville, God bless you. They're not going to be great either. Sorry. So with that being said, I think Tennessee is the team to beat in the AFC South. Who do you think is winning the AFC South this year?
Well, let me start off by saying I hope all these Houston fans have enjoyed seeing Deshaun Watson make an absolute fool of himself.
Yes.
Because that is exactly what has happened to Deshaun Watson here in the offseason. I mean, he was a great player when he first came up to the pros. Allegations against him, it's like Houston fans are asking, are we even going to watch football this year?
Right.
I mean, you got Tyrod Taylor, who's more than likely going to be named the starter week 1.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's good, but he's not great. And like you said for Jacksonville, God bless them. I mean, you do have Urban Meyer as the head coach. You do have Trevor Lawrence as a quarterback, and I hate to say this about Trevor Lawrence, but boy, you're going to lose your first regular season game in week 1 this year, buddy boy. He is going to lose his first regular season game of his football career in week 1 this year.
Yeah, he's going to be humbled.
He had a great point. He had a great preseason. But in the preseason, you're facing off against backups and third stringers.
Yep.
You're going to be stepping on the field with the big boys in week 1. So, God bless you, Trevor Lawrence. The surfer dude's going to be knocked flat on his boots this year.
Yeah, it's going to be bad for Jacksonville. So we're going to switch now to the AFC East and this division.
Actually, I never really got to give my prediction.
Oh, that's right. Who do you got?
Well, Indianapolis. They got Carson Wentz back there. However, there's only 2 words that I can say. And this is why I think Tennessee is going to win the division this year. I got 2 words for you. Stiff arm. Derrick Henry has got one of the strongest and most powerful stiff arms that I have ever seen. I mean, I remember watching him in a game last year in which he put up a stiff arm and pretty much knocked the defensive player like 10 yards downfield.
Or did.
I mean, and not And not to mention, Julio Jones is joining Tennessee this year.
Yes.
Julio Jones is joining Tennessee this year. So Tennessee with Tannehill, Jones, AJ Brown, and of course, yeah, I can't call Derrick Henry running back. Can't call him a running back because I got to call him a freaking monster truck. Yeah, Tennessee is going to win the division, hands down.
Yep, he's basically a monster truck. He's a monster truck. Monster power. Yeah, that's what he has is monster power. And he's going to knock over defenders, like you said. And Derrick Henry, man, so good. So we're going to go to the AFC East. And this division has changed, has really changed in the last couple of years, especially last year after Brady left New England after being with them for 20 years. And Buffalo last year took that division with their quarterback, Josh Allen. And that kid is going to be a star in the making. And he had a great year for Buffalo last year. And he has the weapons around him. You got Cole Beasley. Oh, my goodness. Just this, he's one of the biggest targets on that team. And he had a great year for Buffalo last year. And their defense was really good last year. Really good. And they were so close to get into the Super Bowl, but they lost to Kansas City in the championship game. And New England last year with Cam Newton at quarterback, he was not consistent because he was out with COVID last year and just they didn't have the chemistry with the Patriots and the Dolphins. They had a good record last year, but they barely missed the playoffs. And it just, unfortunately for them, they missed the playoffs. And the New York Jets, yeah, that was bad. That was really bad. And what was even worse, cover 0 against the Raiders. Cover 0. And they lost the game. They lost the game, and they lost their shot at getting Trevor Lawrence when they actually won a game. That's the one thing about the Jets last year, that they had a chance to get Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, and they blew it. They absolutely blew it. And this division, to me, it's no questions. Don't even have to go through the team's records last year. Buffalo is the team to beat in the AFC East. Who do you have winning the AFC East?
Oh, man. Yeah, I'm going to use the same word for Cleveland that I used for Cleveland to describe the New York Jets. Laughing stock. Ever since oh man, I hate to bring this up for the Jets because I know most Jets fans had this in the past. But ever since the butt fumble, the Jets have gone downhill. Ever since the butt fumble, the Jets have gone downhill. And Zach Wilson, he was a great quarterback in college.
Yeah.
But no, the Jets ain't going nowhere.
No, except back to where they always do, the bottom of the barrel.
Yep. Now, Miami, they have been linked to Deshaun Watson. Yep. And Deshaun Watson has said that he would waive his no trade clause if Miami were to reach a deal. However, as of right now, Miami needs to focus on the present. And what they have in the present right now is a absolute Hawaiian gunslinger named Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, you got to admit, from his days at Alabama, Tua could sling the ball downfield.
Yes, he could.
I mean, he completed a 41-yard touchdown in overtime, 2nd and 26 to beat Georgia in the 2018 national championship game.
Yep.
I will never forget that play. I watch it literally all the time. I mean, that was the most perfect throw I've ever seen out of any college quarterback.
And you figured the game was over at that point because it looked over. And usually games like that, like in the NFL, they usually don't go so well for teams when they're having to throw the ball and it's second and long or third and long, whatever the down and distance is. I mean, when you're having it,
Exactly.
and that throw, perfectly thrown ball, 41 yards for the game-winning score. That was insane. And that's a classic play that will live on for years and centuries to come.
You see, and Tua is also going to have a hot target of his joining him in the Miami uniform this year, and that is the speedster known as Jalen Waddle.
Yep.
Now, Waddle is fast. I mean, every time I thought Waddle couldn't get faster, he went out and got faster.
Yep.
I mean, Miami, they have the skill set, they have the playmakers to be a threat. Now, Buffalo, Buffalo's my pick to win the division because, like you said, Josh Allen is a star in the making. He's got Cole Beasley to throw to, and not to mention, if there's one thing, that anybody playing Buffalo needs to do this year, is to not leave Stephon Diggs wide open.
No.
Because Stephon Diggs will make you pay. I mean, and I got one prime example for you.
And I think I know where you're going with this, but go right ahead.
The Minneapolis Miracle.
That's what I figure. Circle gets a square, Johnny. Tell him what he's won.
The Minneapolis Miracle. I mean, you do not leave Stephon Diggs wide open because he will burn you pay.
He'll burn you. He'll burn you alive. I mean, Stephon Diggs.
He will make you pay for sure.
Yes. I mean,
now, yeah, Buffalo's my pick to win the division, hands down. But I was at work whenever I saw the breaking news. Cam Newton gets cut in New England. I was like, what?
Yep.
I was not. I mean, was I expecting Cam Newton to start for New England? No, because Mac Jones, another Bama product,
Yep.
he went in and pretty much took over New England. I mean, he was making pinpoint passes. He was accurate on all of his throws. I mean, Mac Jones, I knew was going to start since day one.
Yep.
But was I expecting Cam Newton to get cut? Absolutely not. I was expecting him to be at least a backup. But get cut? No. I was not expecting that.
Exactly. I mean, because MVP with Carolina in 2015. And I mean, and when he's healthy and he's consistent, he's a great player. But but that division, like you said, it's Buffalo's division. So we have one more division, and then we're going to get to the fun stuff. That's the AFC West. So with this division, I think it's pretty simple. Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City Chiefs went to their second straight Super Bowl this past year and were defeated by Tampa Bay 31-9. And Patrick Mahomes this year, I think, is going to have another all great year for Kansas City and go to another Pro Bowl this year. And even though Sammy Watkins is not there with Kansas City anymore, and even though Damian Williams is not there with Kansas City anymore, this is Patrick Mahomes. This is Patrick Mahomes we're talking about, folks. This guy won a Super Bowl in his second starting season before the age of 25 against San Francisco. And he went to the Super Bowl last year and lost to the great Tom Brady. But if there's one thing about Patrick Mahomes that I know and that I love about this kid, he is a humbled young man. He is very gracious, and he's grateful for all the things that he's accomplished. And even in defeat, He didn't let that game defeat him and him go and be like Cam Newton against the Broncos 4 or 5 years ago. Oh, all that crap. I mean, Patrick Mahomes got destroyed by a Tampa Bay's defense last year. He gets up there in the press conference with the media, and he is answering every question with respect. This guy knows how to carry himself. And Kansas City, to me, is the team to beat in the AFC West. But there is a but and a caveat here. That is the Los Angeles Chargers. Justin Herbert. That is the franchise quarterback for Los Angeles. And Los Angeles last year, they were pretty solid last year. But the problem that killed the Chargers was the defeats that they had. They had so many close games that ended mostly in defeat. Missed field goals, touchdowns that got overturned, defensive plays breaking down, defensive, schemes breaking down against the offensive possessions. Yeah, not a great year for Los Angeles last year, but I think LA is going to be one. They might be. You know what? They might be one of the wildcard teams this year. I think the Chargers might have a pretty good year. Las Vegas last year, they were pretty good. Derek Carr had a great year last year. His first great year since 2016 when he went down with the injury against Tennessee. And I think Derek Carr is very I think he's happy where he's at right now in his career. You got John Gruden coaching the team, obviously, again. And I think the Raiders this year are going to be pretty good this year. But the one team at the bottom of the barrel, Denver. Denver's not going to be great this year. But my pick and a lot of our picks last month, whenever this division, Kansas City. But we also had Los Angeles making the playoffs or having a shot at making the playoffs. Who do you have winning the AFC West?
Well, before I answer that question, let me ask you a simple question.
All right.
If you were a coach or a player or somewhat involved with the organization,
yes,
would you rather lose in a blowout or would you rather lose by one possession?
Honestly, if it were me and you give me one of those two options, easily blowout.
Exactly. I would prefer getting beat by 50 than to lose by 5. I would rather get beat by 30 than lose by 3. I mean,
I would rather lose by 14 than lose by 3 because
yeah,
that team was better than you, or hell, even by 10, because you know that team was better than you on that given day. But that was the problem with the Chargers.
And yeah, I was going to say, you were exactly right. That is what killed the LA Chargers last year. So many games were lost due to one possession. And nobody's going to catch Kansas City because I'm not only seeing a division title this year, I'm seeing a third straight Super Bowl. I'm seeing a third straight Super Bowl for Kansas City. But if the Chargers can buckle down and actually be on the right side of these one possession games, San Diego could be a legitimate threat. They could be a wild card threat. Shoot, it could probably be Kansas City and the Chargers for the AFC Championship game this year.
Ooh, that's an interesting take because you got a very good point about that because the AFC is a very tough conference to get through. And man, now that we got all those divisions out of the way and giving your opinion, letting you voice your opinions on these divisions, let's get to what we were just briefly talking about. And that was the breaking news that came down in the NFL this week when the news broke that Cam Newton, the former MVP for the Carolina Panthers in 2015, taking Carolina to Super Bowl 50 against Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos. He gets released after 1 year in New England played with the Patriots. I, along with you and the rest of the fans in sports, especially the NFL, were stunned. An MVP player in Newton gets cut by New England. And this right here should say a lot on why Newton was cut by New England. This is why I think he was cut. I think he was cut because Belichick knows that Matt Jones is the future of the New England Patriots. And Cam Newton last year did not have a full year with New England because of COVID issues and not having chemistry with his offensive weapons and not having chemistry with Edelman, and all that and all those guys. And it just, I mean, this was a shocking move. I did not see this coming. All of us didn't see this coming. And just the fact that Belichick pulled this, I think Belichick was the one that decided this. Hey, get rid of this guy because I know who's going to be the future of this organization, even if I decide to retire in a couple of years. It's Matt freaking Jones. Who I say again? Matt Jones. Matt Jones is the future of the New England Patriots, and he is the best option for the Patriots. And like you said in the preseason, he's looked good. But now we are coming up on the regular season next week, and this will determine a lot of things about as the next couple weeks in the regular season for the Patriots with Jones at quarterback. But let me ask you this: with Newton being cut by the Patriots, who do you think is next? It can be a quarterback, a wide receiver, running back, whoever you can think of that will be on the chopping block.
Oh boy, that is a really interesting question. That is a very interesting question. I mean, it could be anybody because you never know what these teams could be thinking about as far as who's going to guide us to the promised land, who is going to bring us the most success, who is going to pretty much take this team and put it on his back and guide us to a possible Super Bowl championship down the line. I got one player in mind, and it's probably not the person that anybody would expect. The one player that I think is on the chopping block as far as being cut by an NFL squad or at the most benched for, let's say, another quarterback or something, or another running back or something, is the man who has had issues not only with injuries but with age. And the man that I'm thinking of is Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger has struggled. He has battled injuries for pretty much the majority of his career. Ever since he guided Pittsburgh to the Super Bowl win over the Packers back in 2010, Big Ben has done nothing. He has done nothing to help his case. Now, Big Ben, he has pondered walking away from football for so many years. He has pondered it.
Yes, he has.
But he has always come back. However, Big Ben's time is just about up.
Agreed.
His time is just about up. I mean, because I say the same thing to Big Ben, the same way I say about Tom Brady, the same thing I say about Patrick Mahomes, the same thing I say about Josh Allen, all these amazing players in the NFL. I just have one thing to say to everybody. It don't matter if you're a quarterback, running back, D-line, defensive end. I have just one thing to say. You're not getting any younger.
That's right.
You're not getting any younger.
Father Time is undefeated.
I mean, if you want to take the reins of a team and got them to the promised land, got them to the Super Bowl, heck, even got them to Disney World. By all means, go ahead and do it. However, time is running out. And time is running out for Big Ben. If Big Ben does not get his act together, I do not see him playing in the NFL next year. Not just for Pittsburgh, but the entire NFL.
Interesting. And you have a valuable point. And I think the player that is going to be next on the chopping block as far as not really playing anymore, or people aren't going to trust him because of his reputation, especially with this offseason, Deshaun Watson. Because even if he does say, oh, I want to go to Miami, how can Miami trust him to be consistent with their team, considering, let's just say if Houston does cut him in the next couple of weeks or so, or whenever they decide to, it's not going to be great, because if he goes to Miami or any team, he's not going to have the chemistry with that team in the offseason like a lot of these other teams do, because they hasn't had a full offseason with any team. And especially even with his own team in Houston, because he hasn't really done nothing ever since these allegations and all things that happened with his drama in the offseason this year. So I think it's Deshaun Watson. I think he's going to be next to be cut from a team, from Houston.
Yeah. I agree with you there. Deshaun Watson, it seems he's more concerned about being around the ladies than he is being around the pigskin and his bros on the football team.
Exactly.
I was thinking Deshaun Watson. I really was. But I wanted to surprise everybody. I wanted to bring out the ultimate surprise out of everybody, and that's why I'm saying Big Ben. There's no doubt Big Ben is going to be in Pittsburgh this whole season, and he may have one of the best years of his career. However, at the same time, he could struggle so bad that he gets benched in favor of Dwayne Haskins, and come the end of the year, Mike Tomlin hands him a pink slip and tells him to have a good life.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm very surprised that Roethlisberger is back again for another year. I really wish that Roethlisberger would listen to professional wrestlers or professional athletes in sports that have talked about not getting any younger. Especially, I wish that Roethlisberger would listen to the words of The Undertaker, because Undertaker has said in interviews in the last couple of years, especially when he was on Steve Austin's Broken Skull sessions in 2019, especially the first one in November of 2 years ago, he said, I don't want to become a parody of myself. It's hard to get away from the ring, because you've enjoyed that, and you enjoyed the rush from the crowd and performing in front of fans. And I know Roethlisberger enjoys playing football and being in front of the team that he has called home for 17 years in the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's had a great year, a great career with Pittsburgh, winning 2 Super Bowls, lost to Green Bay in that Super Bowl, but it was he's had a great run with Pittsburgh, and multi-time Pro Bowls, 2 Super Bowl championships, and 3 Super Bowl appearances, multiple championship games against the Patriots, and all that stuff. But I think Big Ben's time, it's about to be up in Pittsburgh. It's just it's not going to be pretty, as far as, because I think, unfortunately, an injury or something like that is going to happen, and I think it's going to, call him make him realize, go, hey, my time's up. I've had a great run. Thank you, Pittsburgh, for all the great years. And now I want to change over to the playoffs. Playoffs? We're talking about playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs? Yes, folks, the playoffs. This year is going to be a rather interesting year for the NFL, because it is the first year that all 32 teams in the National Football League are playing 17 regular season games. And this right here It's going to be an interesting year. And I'm going to start out with the NFC and my predictions on who I think is going to make it to the playoffs.
See, and hang on, hang on. I don't mean to cut you off, but I do want to also mention that this will be the first year that we see not 6, but 7 teams representing each conference.
That's right.
We will see 7 teams representing each conference this year. Only the number 1 seed in each conference is going to have the bye week.
That's right.
In playoffs. So that right there is going to be very interesting.
It is. It is. And I think in the NFC, for me, it's going to be Green Bay. Ooh. Tampa Bay. Okay, so Tampa Bay, Green Bay. I will say the Rams and let's see, Dallas as your division winners. And then my wild card teams. Ooh, I'm torn. Okay. Let's see. I will go with it's a toss-up between San Francisco and Arizona because I don't know. It's so tough. It's not easy. It's so hard. I had to do that because that's the new Rolling Stones song. That's the new Rolling Stones songs that I never heard that song. It's an old song, but it's a good Rolling Stones song. And we heard that for the first time a couple weeks ago. I was like, I never heard this song. Where the hell did this come from? It's an old song. But anyways, it's definitely not easy making these
album.
That's right, from the Aftermath album. Thank you very much, Sarah R.A. And it's a great song. And so if I had to pick, NFC, who are the wild card teams I would pick? Okay, I'm gonna pick San Francisco. Okay, San Francisco. Ooh. Oh man. That's a toughie. Seattle and one more. You know what? I'm feeling crazy. So you know what? I'm gonna go with the Arizona. I have 3 NFC West teams representing the playoffs. So that's how deep that division is in the NFC West. Now for the AFC, I got Kansas City, Cleveland. Yeah, I said it. Cleveland winning the AFC North. I said it right there. Mark it down. September 2nd, Cleveland winning the AFC North. And then you got Buffalo and Tennessee. Those are my division winners. Wild card, you got Baltimore. Ooh. LA, the Chargers. And okay. If he is consistent and they play consistent, Pittsburgh. Now for you, who do you have for the NFC?
Well, let's see. For the NFC, my division winners are Tampa Bay.
Yep.
Green Bay.
Yep.
Washington.
Figure that.
And Seattle as my division winners.
All right.
And the wild card. As much as I would like to see teams from a set of 4 teams from the same division go to the playoffs, I think there is one team in the NFC West that is going to miss out just barely out of the playoffs, and that is the Rams.
Interesting.
My 3 wildcard teams are San Francisco, Arizona, and I'm really going to bite my tongue saying this. You know what? No, I'm not. Because I was going to say Dallas, but I'm going to pull an ultimate swerve here and say Minnesota.
What? Wow.
I'm saying
Whoa. Oh, wow.
I'm saying Minnesota because you got Kirk Cousins, you got Justin Jefferson, you got
Yep.
Dalvin Cook. I mean, that right there is three legit playmakers who I think they won't catch Green Bay in the division.
No.
But Minnesota has the talent to make a wild card push. So yeah, my three wild card teams are San Francisco, Arizona, and Minnesota.
That is rather interesting. Now, who do you got for the AFC?
The AFC, I got Tennessee, I got Buffalo, I got Kansas City, and you might want to mark this down too. Cleveland.
Wow, we're actually agreeing on Cleveland to win the division.
It's gonna be really tight between Cleveland and Baltimore. I will say that. But I think Cleveland's just gonna edge them out by one game. I actually haven't had a look at the NFL schedule lately, but I was hoping that it was going to be Cleveland and Baltimore fighting it out in Week 18 for the division title. I'm kind of hoping it was going to be. I don't think it is, but that's what I was wanting it to be. But yeah, I got Cleveland, Kansas City, Tennessee, and Buffalo win the division.
All right.
Now my wild card teams. Obviously, you got to put Baltimore in there.
Absolutely.
You have to put Baltimore in there. So my three wildcard teams are Baltimore, the Chargers, and oh gosh.
See, that's the tough one.
That is the tough one. Huh. You know, I'm actually going to pull a rabbit out of a hat here.
All right.
And say that because of these playmakers, I think this team has a legit chance to at least make a wild card push. And that team, Las Vegas Raiders.
Ooh, I know a certain person who would not be happy to hear about that now that his Raiders left Oakland for Las Vegas. Sorry there, hijacker Mike. Yeah. So
I'm going with the Raiders because
you're going with the Raiders. Now explain why.
You got Derek Carr.
Yep.
As the quarterback, who is light years better than his brother David.
Oh,
light years
yes.
better than his brother as far as being a quarterback. And you got an absolute speedster who is a sophomore, I might point out, Henry Ruggs III, catching from Derek Carr this year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, true, Ruggs did not have the best rookie year in the pros last year.
Right.
But like it is with all rookies, you got to get your feet wet. You got to study the playbook.
Yep.
I mean, you got to make sure. I mean, you got to know and be confident that you belong out there with the big boys.
Right.
Now, Vegas made a big splash last year. As you know, they made a big splash this year in the offseason. And they got someone to complement Josh Jacobs at running back. And that is Kenyon Drake.
That's right.
Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake May I say they are former Alabama boys. Roll Tide, by the way. But yeah, they are former Alabama boys who were taught by the best coach in all of college football in Nick Saban.
Yes.
I mean, you got that famous 1-2 punch there in the backfield. Now, I don't know how the workload is going to be because I think Josh Jacobs is going to handle a little bit more than Kenyon Drake because Josh Jacobs is just such an elite runner. And not to mention, Jacobs is the younger of the two.
Right.
But yeah, my three wild card teams are going to be the Chargers and the Raiders.
All right. So, with that being said, before we get to the next part of this show, I would like to once again plug our social media platforms. You can follow us on Twitter at @ON_sports show and Facebook.com/Nation Sports Show. And folks, we have 74 subscribers last time I checked. We need to get 100 so we can get that custom made URL. So it will be much easier to find the YouTube channel. Please get us like and share this video. Follow us on our social media platforms and get us to 100 subscribers because we need that custom URL so it'll make it a lot easier finding these shows and finding this channel. And if you want to call in and give us your opinions on the upcoming NFL season starting next week, finally, thank God, yes, then you can go to the Discord server, the Nation's Corner, discord.gg/Nation's Corner, and there is the Sports Topic Show channel. And you can say, I got a comment or a question. Go into the voice channel, our Nation Sports Show, and when you're called upon, unmute yourself, and we'll bring you in, and you can give us your takes in the NFL. And now we're going to switch over to who do you think is going to be the teams that have a legit shot, but they barely missed the playoffs? And I want to start out with the NFC first, or no, the AFC first, actually. Oh man. So we know with this Pittsburgh, situation that Roethlisberger, obviously Father Time is catching up to him. You think Pittsburgh is going to miss the playoffs? Who do you also think is going to have a good chance to make the playoffs, but they barely miss it? They're over 500 and they miss the playoffs still.
One team that I'm definitely going to go with here is New England. Because you have Bill Belichick, who is no doubt one of the best head coaches of all professional football. You got the unquestionable futuristic leader in Mac Attack, Big Mac, Mac Truck, Mac Jones.
Yep.
You got him. You got the leader. You got the accuracy. You got the leadership. You got the dedication that Mac Jones has shown all throughout the preseason. Now, could New England possibly make a playoff push? Absolutely. However, I see the Patriots just missing out by going, let's say, 10-7.
Ooh. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
Possibly 11-6. There's a 5 team out there that get the Nebs playoffs.
Good point. Good point. I think New England has a good chance of getting to the playoffs, and that actually might be my pick for a team that barely misses the playoffs. Because they got the young leader, like you said, at Matt Jones at quarterback. And oh man, now for the NFC, that to me is a tough call because anybody in the NFC, in the West, and even in the East, the North, for me, I'm going to go with Minnesota. Minnesota to me has a legit shot at making the playoffs. The only way that I see Minnesota get into the playoffs is if San Francisco has the injury bug again this year, or if Seattle doesn't get off to a hot start, or if Arizona doesn't get off to a hot start. That right there is going to determine if Minnesota barely misses the playoffs. Who do you have for the NFC?
I am actually torn between two teams. I'm torn between two teams. The NFC is very tough. It is very, very, very tough. Now, it's clearly not as tough as the AFC, but it's still tough all on its own. Oh, but due to the playmakers that this team has, and due to the leadership that a certain quarterback has, I think the team that is going to play really well but miss the playoffs just barely is going to be the Dallas Cowboys.
Interesting.
Because I was thinking either them or the Rams. But the more I was thinking about it, I was like, Dallas clearly has better playmakers than the Rams do.
Right.
Because like I mentioned earlier, you got Dak as quarterback, you got Zeke as your running back, you got Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb as your wideouts.
Right.
You got a stout defense. Now, Dallas could make a splash, and they could be a threat in the East. But I see Dallas just barely missing out on the playoffs this year.
Good point. Very good point. Yeah, it's gonna be one of those years this year. I mean, it's gonna be an interesting year, with 17 games in the regular season for the first time. With 7 teams in the conference in each conference, it's gonna be one of those years that you have that extra team. And I mean, what more could you want? More football. And it's gonna be a great year. I'm so glad football was back. So glad. It's been such a long time since we've had football, and it feels like every time the Super Bowl comes, you're so excited. Oh, it's the Super Bowl! It's the biggest game of NFL. The biggest game of professional football. But at the same time, you get sad because it's the end of the season, and you look forward to the next season. Because if there's one thing that we know about the NFL and what the NFL is good at, parity. Everybody has a chance to make the playoffs. They have an opportunity to fight for a division title. It's to me, it's the greatest professional sports league because the amount of chaos that can happen in a season. One play can change a game. And it's going to be a very interesting year this year.
You are exactly right. And like you said with the Super Bowl, it is a fun time. It is the biggest game of the year. It's always been the biggest game of the year.
Yep.
And it always will be the biggest game of the year.
Yep.
However, like you said, there has been a lot of diseases out there in the world.
Yep.
There's cancer. There's the flu. There's there's COVID.
Yep.
I mean, all of those diseases have been running the streets for so many years. However, there is one disease out there that is far more contagious than cancer, heart attack, stroke, flu, COVID. There is one disease out there that is far more contagious than any of those five put together combined. And that, my good friend, is FWS, football withdrawal syndrome. If you were to ask any football fan, they will suffer from FWS over the summer. Football withdrawal syndrome. Because for high profile football fans like you, me, Kevin, and all other fans out there in the world, there are some diehard fans like you, me, and Kevin, for example.
Yep.
Every year that the Super Bowl goes off, it's like, okay, when's August coming around? Time to start a countdown clock. We gotta make sure August comes around real quick.
Yeah.
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 I mean,
it's gonna be a fun year. It's gonna be a fun ride this year because who knows what's gonna happen this season. I mean, now that the fans are back after the pandemic that we all went through last year, and that was the one interesting factor last year with COVID. When COVID hit last year, the NFL season was last year in 2020 was the most unique season of all time because the stadiums, for the most part, did not have that mystique, the legend that goes on in those stadiums, like a Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Superdome up there, the Superdome up there in New Orleans, Seattle with the 12th man, Green Bay and historic Lambeau Field, Soldier Field in Chicago, and Kansas City at Arrowhead Stadium, and all of those teams, for the majority, did not have fans. Now, Kansas City, Dallas, Jacksonville were fortunate last year to have some fans. But now that the stadiums will be filled with fans, it is so good that football is going to be back the way it should be. And that's played in front of the fans, because that's the one great thing about this sport is when you have a hostile crowd like the 12th man or like Kansas City, Cleveland, those fans in Cleveland at the dog pound, man, oh my goodness. Those NFL fans can be some of the craziest fans at games because when they get loud, they get loud. And it's hard for teams to hear because when it's a big third down or they're on the goal line or they're on the home team's goal line trying to score a touchdown, the fans are trying so hard to get into the quarterback's head so where he can't hear his offensive line and they can't hear him giving his cadences. And last year, that was the one thing that was so interesting about last year. You could hear every cadence by every quarterback so vividly and so loud because the way the games were played last year with mostly no fans in the stadiums. Now, fortunately, in the 2020 playoffs last year, they had fans in the playoffs. Green Bay had fans. New Orleans had fans. And those stadiums that didn't get to have the fan experience, they were so happy to have fans. That's why Drew Brees, when he retired last season against Tampa Bay in the divisional round, I was so happy for Brees because he was able to finish out his career in front of fans. If he didn't finish out his career in front of fans, then not saying it wouldn't have been memorable for him, but having the crowd to wave to, that I thought that was cool. To have that contact, the eye contact with the fans. It's so great to have fans back in the stadiums this year, and it's going to be a wild ride this year.
Absolutely. And let me just go back a little bit about Drew Brees. I will say that if Drew Brees would not have had fans watch him in his final game last year, I guarantee and can confirm this beyond a shadow of a doubt that we would have seen Drew Brees play one more year.
I agree.
We would have seen Drew Brees play one more year because if there is one thing that football players would love to see, would love to endure in their careers, it's playing their final game in front of fans.
Exactly.
The fans are what make and break the sport.
Exactly.
If there would be no sports in the world. There would be no baseball, no football, no basketball, no soccer, no tennis, no wrestling, no nothing without fans.
Exactly.
I mean, the fans are no doubt the ultimate winners in this. In this year.
Yes.
They are no doubt the biggest fan. They are no doubt the biggest ultimate winners.
Absolutely. I mean, think about this. This year when AEW had their first pay-per-view in front of a full sold out arena, or no, a full sold out, yeah, or no stadium. Sorry, when they played when they had their show up there in Jacksonville for Double or Nothing, dude, that place was rocking at Daly's Place, sold out, and I knew from that first match between Hangman Adam Page and Brian Cage, I said, oh, damn, we're in for one hell of a night because the crowd is on their feet. They're energetic. They're into this stuff. Hangman was over that night, and that was a great pay-per-view. And this weekend, it's all out. Chicago, AEW, and it's the return to in-ring action for a man that has been absent from professional wrestling for 7 years, and that is the one, the only CM Punk. As he takes
CM Punk.
I know we're a sports show, but I had to tie this into wrestling as well because the Nation's Corner this past weekend was representing at the Chase in St. Louis. The NWA had a great weekend of wrestling. Saturday night with NWA Empower and the all-women's pay-per-view that was produced by a future Hall of Famer herself, Mickie James. And Mickie James came out there and gave a passionate speech about women's wrestling not being given the chance, the opportunity to be successful. Oh, all women can't go out there and do this. Well, they proved it that night in front of a sold out crowd. The entire weekend was sold out. 900 people inside of that ballroom on their feet, cheering and making noise and letting their voices be heard that women can go out there, kick ass, take names, and steal the entire weekend, because that is what the women did this past Saturday night when all of these companies came together. NWA, AEW, AAA, all of these companies came together. Some of the girls from Mission Pro Wrestling, everybody coming together and putting on an entire great weekend of wrestling for women's wrestling. Impact was represented very well by Deonna Purrazzo with her match against Melina. Mickie James coming out there and wrestling the next night. Oh my goodness, it was just such a great weekend for women's wrestling. I mean, you figured, she was so energetic that Saturday night with that after that show. She was like, you know what? I got to wrestle the next night. And she did. She did against Kylie Ray. And it was a great match. And, and just the entire weekend. I mean, Camille had a hell of a match against legit Layla. My God, that match was phenomenal. Layla is a teeny tiny girl, and she picked up a brick house in Camille and slung her around like she was a sack of potatoes. It was amazing. The suplexes, the German suplexes. It was an awesome weekend, and the next night, NWA 73. Oh, before I get to that, Allison Kay and Marty Bell winning the NWA World Women's Tag Team Championships. That was awesome. Hell of a tournament that weekend with those semifinal matches, and then the final match, Allison Kay and Marty Bell winning those tag belts. And the next night, NWA 73. And holy shit, what an opening match with Tim Storm. Oh my goodness. That ladder bump he took, Oh my God. Just insane. Insane. Oh my God. And man, that show was good as well. But it was highlighted by 16-time world champion, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, came out there, and that crowd was electric. Man, when he came out there, he got in that ring and he said, "I'm nervous, man. I'm nervous because I told Billy Corgan, hey, I asked him, how long can I speak? Oh, Billy said, oh, you're Ric Flair. Speak as long as you want." And man, I don't know if you saw it, Joey, but man, Ric Flair came out there, man, and had an incredible promo, a speech, talking
Yep.
about the history of the NWA and putting over AEW and Tony Khan, putting over Vince McMahon, Triple H, Steve Austin, The Undertaker, Randy Orton, the NWA, putting that company over and its history with the NWA. And just, it was such a great speech, such a great promo. I was like, oh my goodness. And our good buddy, Chad from Albany, during that, we were watching that pay-per-view together. All of us were on Zoom, and Chad said it right there. It was historic. It was historic what was happening in front of our friends, Front Row, and Tony, Neil, Trinda, and Mrs. Front Row, representing the nation's corner. It was an incredible night of professional wrestling this past weekend. Highlighted by the main event between Trevor Murdoch and the Real World's Champion for 1,044 days, the national treasure himself, Nick Aldis. That was a phenomenal match. Both men told a great story. Nick and Trevor pulled out all the stops in that match, wanting to win. Both men wanted to win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Both were fighting their tails off, fighting tooth and nail, grinding it out, pulling out all the stops. And when it was all said and done and all the smoke was cleared, Trevor Murdoch dethroned Aldis and became the new NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. And this past Monday and Tuesday was the tapings for NWA Power. And man, we are in for one great ride for the NWA this year with this upcoming season. And can I just say real quick that even though she's annoying as hell, but Taryn Terrell is awesome. She is awesome. But Joey, I like I said, if you saw anything from this past weekend, give us your thoughts on this past historical weekend for the NWA.
I mean, unfortunately, I did not watch any of the NWA pay-per-views, but
if you can, man, check it out.
But that does not mean I was not reading about it. I was reading about it, and Ric Flair, and I saw videos. Ric Flair had an amazing speech.
Yep.
He was really putting over AEW, WWE, Impact, all these wrestling companies with that amazing speech. But let me go back to the Trevor Murdoch match. Do you know what was the one thing that made that win by Trevor Murdoch most intensifying and most memorable?
What's that?
Murdoch said that he was putting his career on the line in that match.
Yep, he did.
Trevor Murdoch, I heard him say over video before as the weeks leading up to the match that if he did not win, he was going to retire.
Yep. And he did it for his mentor, the late great and former NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Harley Race. He did it for Harley, and it was a phenomenal weekend. His ending promo, and Ric Flair comes out there and holds his hand held high for him becoming the new NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. It was a phenomenal weekend, an incredible weekend, and I am pretty sure that this Saturday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Nation's Corner is going to be live and in color, live and in charge. In Front Row, Tony Justice and the one and only Devhausen will be talking about the weekend that was the NWA. And you can follow the Nation's Corner on Twitter at Nation's Corner, Facebook.com/The Nation's Corner, and our YouTube channel, YouTube.com/The Nation's Corner. We are already over 100 subscribers. We already got the custom URL for that. We were at 128 subscribers last time I checked on the Nation's Corner. So if you would follow our social media platforms on that as well, and keep us up, keep up with us in the world of professional wrestling. And man, it's going to be a great weekend for AEW with All Out this weekend. Man, oh my God, I'm so excited. So excited for AEW. Man, it's just, man, it's as Travis Tritt would say, it's a great day to be alive. It's a great day to be alive as a sports fan and as a wrestling fan, because starting next Thursday, finally, the return of the NFL season, and the first game, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the defending Super Bowl champions, take on Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Joey, I have to ask you this. Who do you have winning the opening game between Tampa Bay and Dallas?
I'm going Tampa Bay.
Final score?
I'm going Tampa Bay. I think it's going to be, I will say that I have some questions about Dak Prescott's shoulder, because that has been lingering throughout the whole entire offseason. He actually did not throw for 2 weeks because of that shoulder.
Yep.
I will say, though, if Dak comes in and plays like he's supposed to play, both teams have stout defenses. So
Absolutely.
I think Tampa Bay is going to win by a score of 27-17.
I have that game going like this. I think, like you said, if Prescott can be consistent in this game, because, like you said, you have a right to question him with this game, because him being out with that shoulder injury, and that lingering shoulder, and, how well is he going to be able to throw the ball in this game, against that defense of Tampa Bay? Because that Tampa Bay defense, they're hungry. They are hungry, savage animals, and they're ready to wreak havoc on any offensive line, any quarterback that is in the backfield. And I think Tampa Bay is going to win this game 31-17. And it's going to be a rather interesting game, and a very interesting upcoming week 1. Man, the game I'm looking forward to the most in week 1 is Kansas City and Cleveland. And I think Kansas City is going to barely win this game. I'm going to go, let's see. I'm going to go 24-21.
Okay, that's very interesting. Now, I also think it's going to be a close game, but my score is going to be a little bit higher, because I know how Kansas City and Cleveland both have very prolific offenses.
Yep.
Because, on Cleveland's side, you got the 1-2 running back punch of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. You got the 1-2 wide receiver punch in Odell and Jarvis Landry. And, of course, you got Baker Mayfield back there. But on Kansas City, you not only have Patrick Mahomes, but you have the ultimate speedster in Tyreek Hill. You got another good hands-on receiver in McCole Hardman. And not to mention, you got the best tight end in the NFL today, and that's Travis Kelce. So, due to those teams having the prolific offenses, I think Kansas City is going to win, but my score is going to be 34-31.
And it's funny you say that, because that was going to be my initial score, but I had a feeling that Cleveland's defense were going to make some noise on Kansas City, and that's why I have it 24-21 with that score. But there's an interesting question I want to ask you as far as Because we know last year, Cleveland was that team that shocked the National Football League, shocked every single fan. Cleveland hadn't made it to the playoffs in years, and haven't had a winning record since 2007. So, with that being said, who do you think is this year's team that is going to be the team that they don't have to make the playoffs, but they can make some noise? Who do you think is going to be that one team this year that is going to be the one that shocks the entire NFL world? That is going to say, "Hey, we're here to stay. We're not going to be the laughing stock anymore." Or, we're going to be that team that is going to be, here for years to come, or they have a chance, to possibly make the playoffs. Who do you have?
Who? That is a very, very interesting and tough question. Oh man. I mean, it could be anybody. It could be anybody.
It's a tough one.
It is a very tough one, but I have made my decision.
Who do you got?
The one team that I know has been the laughing stock for so many years. So many years. They have made moves not only on the field now over the past number of years. They have a surefire head coach who is going to take them places because he's already done so. You got an offense who is a quarterback, in my opinion, a quarterback away from making a deep run in the playoffs. You got a defense that is young, but a defense that makes plays. A defense that is play worthy. A defense that is going to send some people run up with their tails between their legs. And that one team that I am thinking of is my boys up in Washington.
Wow, look at you. Interesting.
My boys up in Washington. Because think about it. On the defensive side of the ball, you have Chase Young, you have Montez Sweat, you have Matt Ioannidis, you have Daron Payne, you have Jonathan Allen, you have William Jackson III. All of those guys are going to be ultimate playmakers this year. On the offensive side of the ball, you got one of the best young receivers in the game in Terry McLaurin. You got a speedster who can spend time in the number 2 receiver position and also in the slot in Curtis Samuel. You brought in another amazing slot receiver in Adam Humphries out of Tennessee. You drafted an absolute showstopper in the 3rd round out of North Carolina in De'Ami Brown.
Mm-hmm.
So all Washington needs right now is a good, hot shot young quarterback. If they can go out in the draft next year and get that hot shot young quarterback that they want, it could be Spencer Rattler out of Oklahoma. It could be Sam Howell out of North Carolina. Heck, it could be anybody out there. It could be Bryce Young from Alabama. I mean, if Washington goes out and finds that hotshot young quarterback that they need, them along with that offense, defense, and head coach Ron Rivera, and not to mention one of the best defensive coordinators in the game in Jack Del Rio, there is no doubt in my mind that Washington is about to become the team that is here to stay, just like back in the 90s and 80s.
That is a very interesting take by you. That's a very good take by you because I mean you're right. They're a quarterback away, from being a playoff team, and I think
And
you have
see, and who knows?
a good point.
And who knows? Yes, we could draft that hotshot young quarterback next year, but Ron Rivera could also bring in a veteran to kind of teach the quarterback how to play the game. Look at players like Jimmy Garoppolo, who understudied
Right.
Tom Brady. Look at players like Drew Lock, who worked under Peyton Manning.
Or
You
Patrick
got
Mahomes, who was the understudy for Alex Smith in his last year in Kansas City.
hey, you got players like Aaron Rodgers who learned under Brett Favre.
That's right.
I
That's right.
mean, I thought about this. I have thought about this ever since I saw it on Facebook. And I think that there is one veteran who I would love, and I mean love, to see Washington bring in to teach a hotshot young quarterback to becoming the next future star in the pros. And you know who that player is?
Who's that?
Aaron Rodgers.
Hmm.
I have seen it. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has said that he does not really want to play for Washington. However, I know Riverboat Ron Rivera like any other Washington fan. Riverboat Ron, he knows who he wants as a quarterback. He knows who he wants his playmakers to be. And I feel that with a good bit of convincing and possibly us trading up in the draft next year to get a quarterback like Spencer Rattler, possibly Bryce Young or Sam Howell out of North Carolina, the one guy who I know can come in and teach one of those three quarterbacks would be Aaron Rodgers, because Rodgers learned under Brett Favre. And
That's
look
right.
where look where that has gone Aaron Rodgers today.
That's right. Good solid point. Who do you have making it to Championship Sunday? I have for the NFC Tampa Bay, obviously. That's to be expected. Tampa Bay, oh man. All right. I have picked him apart from time and time again on this show because of his actions in the offseason and the way he was acting. But Green Bay, Tampa Bay and Green Bay for the NFC Championship game. And for the AFC, I have Kansas City. Oh, oof. Huh. I think you know where I'm going with this.
I think I know too.
uh, Cleveland.
Very interesting. I'm actually going to agree with three of your four teams right there. The ones I'm agreeing on are Green Bay and Tampa Bay,
Yep.
obviously in the NFC. Now in the AFC, I'm agreeing with Kansas City. I'm agreeing with them. However, the team who I think, based on the playmaking ability, that is going to challenge Kansas City in the AFC Championship game is going to be the Los Angeles Chargers.
Whoa. Interesting pick.
I think it is going to be a matchup of division rivals in the AFC Championship. And to think, Patrick Mahomes against Justin Herbert. That
That
is my pick in the AFC title game this year.
wow. All right. That is a very interesting, solid pick right there. Oh my goodness. That's a very good pick. Now, the ultimate question, the Super Bowl. And I think it's going to be a rematch. Kansas City, Tampa Bay. Who do you got?
Well, obviously I'm going with Kansas City because you cannot underestimate Patrick Mahomes, because Patrick Mahomes may go out and not play the best game in the AFC title game, but all the playmakers that Kansas City has will guide them to the Super Bowl. Now, in the NFC, I'm going Kansas City, Green Bay.
Ooh, all right. Interesting.
I'm going Kansas City and Green Bay. The matchup of the very first Super Bowl.
Wow.
Kansas City and Green Bay. I
Green
think
Bay.
it's gonna be, as a matter of fact, I've already got the perfect name for a possible Kansas City Green Bay Super Bowl this year. And it's a very catchy name, but it's also very funny. You ready for this?
Yeah.
The Battle of the State Farm Clients.
That's true. That's true.
The Battle of the State Farm Clients.
That's true. That's very true.
I'm telling you, ever since I learned that Aaron Rodgers was coming back for another year with Green Bay, I was thinking Kansas City, Tampa Bay at one point. But then when I heard that Aaron Rodgers was coming back, and not to mention that he has his two top guys back in Devontae Adams and Randall Cobb, I was like, that's it. I'm taking Tom Brady and Tampa Bay out. I'm putting Green Bay in.
Man, that's a very, very interesting takes by you, and I'm still in a state of shock over your pick. But the Chargers, the Los Angeles Chargers, going to face Kansas City in the championship game. My God, that's a very, very hot take right there, my friend. I mean, my goodness. I mean, man, these 2 hours have flown by, talking predominantly professional football. And like I said, next week, it finally happens, ladies and gentlemen, the start of the NFL 2021 regular season. The games matter now. No games are supposed to be taken off now because every game matters come next week. And the one game that has me interested at some point down the line, because he could be a part of this list. I'm referring to Tom Brady. And that list is being a part of the list that has defeated every team in the National Football League. And I think Tampa Bay this year is going to beat the Patriots.
That is very interesting. And I think that's going to happen too. Now, I'm going to not really switch the subject a little bit, but I happened to see something on Facebook. I think I saw it yesterday and I saw it again today that really ponders my thought process. It was a comment made by a former New England Patriots player.
Okay.
And I want you to really think about this.
Okay.
The question is, if Tom Brady was never around in New England, or I guess what I'm trying to say is, would Bill Belichick be an elite coach today if it wasn't for Tom Brady?
That is a very interesting question. And I'll tell you why. Because, in my opinion, I mean, yes, Belichick was always a great defensive coordinator in his years with the Giants and those teams.
And
But
don't forget his step with Cleveland.
that's right. That's right. But his track record as a head coach was not that great. So that's a very valuable question. In my opinion, I don't think Belichick would have been a great head coach without Tom Brady.
Yeah, I mean, I actually saw the comment that was made by former New England Patriots linebacker Dante Hightower. He actually made the comment saying if Tom Brady would not have been around, Bill Belichick would not have been an elite coach. And I agree with that. I do. Because, yes, Bill Belichick has always been a defensive minded coach because he had great stints in Cleveland and with the New York Giants. However, if it would not have been for the little kid from Michigan who was taken in the 6th round, the 199th overall pick, named Tom Brady, Bill Belichick would not be the elite coach that he is today, or that he would have been.
Yep. I mean, and that's a very interesting, question to ask, because think about this: in the Super Bowl against Atlanta, they're down 28-3 in that second half. If you don't have Tom Brady as your quarterback, chances are the Patriots are not winning that game.
Yeah. I mean, just like this past year with with Tampa Bay against New England. If Tom Brady would not have been in Tampa Bay last year, Tampa Bay not only would have not smelled the Super Bowl, Tampa Bay would not have even smelled the playoffs.
Right.
Tampa Bay would not have smelled the playoffs last year if it wasn't for Tom Brady. Now, I don't really care about Tom Brady. I don't really like him as an athlete, but I'm just like I don't really care about LeBron James in the NBA. I don't really give a care about any one of those athletes. However, you do have to respect their leadership. You do have to respect their playmaking ability. And I mean, me growing up as a Washington fan, obviously the one team that we're going to hate more than anybody is Dallas.
Right.
However, you have to respect the players that have been on those Dallas teams, because you have Roger Staubach, you have Troy Aikman, you have Michael Irvin, you have Emmitt Smith. I mean, you have all those amazing players for a team that you absolutely dislike, but you have to respect their playmaking abilities.
Right.
You have to respect them. And that's the way that I feel about Tom Brady. I don't like him, but I do respect him.
And I know we all are tired of Brady winning these Super Bowls, but it's simple, but it's hard to do. And this is what I'll say. You wanted to quit winning? Simple, but hard. But do it. Beat them. Beat them. Beat them. Simple as that. Easier said than done. Beat them. Now, I know you haven't been on the show before, and this is your first time, but I have to ask you this. As a basketball fan, what were your thoughts on this year's NBA Finals? Because I thought, from a matchup standpoint and from a competitive standpoint, this was one of the better NBA Finals that we have seen in quite some time between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Phoenix Suns.
You know, ever since 2008, and I know that's been a long time ago.
Yep.
I was still in high school at that point.
Yep.
But ever since 2008, I haven't officially come out and said it, but I had a thought deep in my mind that for once, for once, I was wanting to see a team, like not a super team, but a team go out and play in the NBA Finals, play it with everything they got, with the average players that they have,
Right.
and go out and win an NBA championship. And I finally saw it this year with Milwaukee because Giannis sent out. I remember when Giannis first got drafted, he put a post on Twitter back in 2014 that said, I am not going to need a super team to guide my team to an NBA championship. And he finally went out and proved himself
Yep.
6 years later.
Yep.
So
Yes, he did.
Giannis has finally proven that you do not need a super team to win an NBA championship.
That's right. I mean, look at that team they got this past year with Holiday and Middleton being a great sidekick to Antetokounmpo and having Brooke Lopez in the front court with Giannis. And, all of those, the bench is solid. Bobby Portis and Conti and all those guys that help out the team. And Phoenix this past year had a great year with Chris Paul and Devin Booker and all of those players. Man, these two teams will be back. These two teams will be back. And like you said, it felt so good that not a single super team was around. These were two teams that were built properly.
Yeah, now, as much as it pains me to say, with all the offseason moves that these two teams have made, I have a personal feeling deep in my gut that even though I would like to see Milwaukee and Phoenix go back to the NBA Finals next year,
Yep.
it's going to be the Nets and the Lakers
Yeah.
in the finals next year. I hate to say it,
Yeah.
but
You might be right.
you're going to have two super teams in the finals
Yeah.
next year with the
Yeah.
Nets and the Lakers.
Unfortunately, I think you're right. I think you're right. Like, and that's the thing about this past year's finals. The entire series, with the exception of a couple of games, was super competitive. Game 3 went down to, Game 4 and Game 5 specifically went down to the wire. Phoenix could have won Game 4, could have won Game 5, but it didn't happen because the ball bounced a certain different way, and Drew Holiday had one of the best defensive plays in crunch time, deflecting the ball out of Booker's hands and getting the clutch steal and lobbing the ball up to Giannis and Antetokounmpo slamming the door, the hammer, if you will, on top of Phoenix. And they did. And that was a very, very competitive and great NBA Finals. And Giannis scored 50 points in Game 6, the highest scoring game output by any player since Michael Jordan's clinching 45 points for Chicago in 98 against the Utah Jazz. And speaking of said Chicago, shout out to our boy Ezra, who is out in Chicago this entire weekend for AEW All Out Weekend. And today tonight is actually at an event. It's the Pro Wrestling Tees versus Team AEW. So that should be that. I'm pretty sure that's fun right now for him. And it's going to be a great weekend for him. And This weekend, you got the Fan Fest out there in Chicago on Friday and Saturday. And then you got Rampage tomorrow in Chicago. And then Sunday, the ultimate event, AEW All Out, live on pay-per-view and Bleacher Report. And like I said, man, it's what a great week it's been of sports and wrestling. And Saturday night, like I said before the top of the hour, Nation's Corner will be live this Saturday night as they will give their thoughts and their reflections on the weekend. That was the NWA this past weekend at the Chase in St. Louis. And it's been a great show. And I would like to once again plug our social media platforms. You can follow us, our Nation Sports Show, on Twitter at @ON_sports show, Facebook.com/Nation Sports Show, The Nation's Corner, Twitter at Nation's Corner, YouTube and Facebook are all the same. Facebook.com/The Nation's Corner and YouTube.com/The Nation's Corner. So yeah, it's been a great show, a great time. And Joey, I hope you had a great time on your first edition of our Nation Sports Show, hanging out with me tonight, talking about the National Football League, because yes, baby, it's back next week. The NFL season finally begins, and I hope you had a great time tonight, my friend.
I had the absolute best time of my life, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you that I am looking forward to coming back to being a part of future shows.
Well, anytime you want to come on this show, my friend, you have an open invitation, my friend, because I know, man, if we can get, if we can get me, you, and Kevin, along with Ezra, talking some sports, it's going to be a lot of fun. Or we can get Sam in Cleveland on here talking about the NFL and our buddy Todd Tomlin, our favorite coach, our Bama boy. He's a Roll Tide fan himself. And it's we got such a great crew, Hijacker doing his Nation Night Fights, boxing reports that will be coming back here soon. And Ezra doing his Cage Fight Chronicles for the MMA world of the UFC. Man, sports it's gearing back up, because next week fans are back in attendance for the NFL. Man, and college football has started back. Oh boy. Man, it's a great time to be alive and be a professional wrestling fan and to be a sports fan. And Joey, before we get off the air, how can everybody follow you on social media?
Well, the only type of social media that I have is on Facebook. So just go in to Facebook and type in Joseph Thornton if you want to follow me on Facebook, or if you want to send me a friend request, you can easily find me on Facebook. I don't really post an awful lot, but I just because I just love surfing around on Facebook, but I don't really get on social much. However, I do happen to have a Twitter account also, and it is at JTSSKINS. That is my Twitter account. If you want to, now I don't really get on Twitter as much either. However, if you want to type in at JTSSKINS, that is my Twitter account. You can follow me on Twitter. You can send me messages. You can tag me and stuff. You can do whatever you want. If you want to talk sports with me, I will talk sports with you back. But yeah, Facebook and Twitter are my two main social media accounts. So follow me if you choose to.
That sounds great, my friend. You can follow me on Twitter at Steven_Wyand. And before we get out the air, tomorrow night, for the first time since December, feels like it's been a long time. But as Forder would say, it feels like the first time. Because yes, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow night, the band that I am in, we play Bad Habit. We will be live rocking out tomorrow night in Darlington, South Kakalaki. Man, it's going to be a lot of fun playing some Led Zeppelin tunes, some AC/DC, maybe some originals, maybe some Bachman Turner Overdrive, Quiet Riot, you name it. We're going to bang our heads. Yeah, it's going to be a great time, man. It's going to be such a great rocking time, man. So, oh my goodness, it's going to be a great weekend of wrestling. Catch the Nation's Corner this Saturday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 Central, 4 p.m. Pacific Time And Sunday, AEW All Out live on pay-per-view. And ladies and gentlemen, like I said, you can join us every Thursday on our Nation Sports Show live here on YouTube, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central, 4 p.m. Pacific. And it's been an awesome time tonight. Follow us on Twitter at ON_sports show, Facebook.com/Nation Sports Show, The Nation's Corner, Twitter at Nation's Corner, Facebook.com/The Nation's Corner, YouTube.com/The Nation's Corner. Folks, it's been a great night talking sports and a little bit of professional wrestling. And next week, Ezra will be back in the saddle again. That's right. Ezra returns next week, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be talking about his weekend at All Out and being at AEW this entire weekend, being at Rampage tomorrow night in Chicago, and, of course, the pay-per-view on Sunday. And he'll be back talking about the NFL next week. And like I said, Joey, anytime you want to be on this show, my friend, the door is wide open, my friend.
Hey, I do want to say one thing to all you sports fans out there. I do also have a YouTube page. I have a YouTube page of my own. And of course, it is just the regular Joseph Thornton, and that is JOSEPHTHORNTON. That is my YouTube page. I have videos of myself doing projects whenever I was down at the University of North Carolina at Pembroke, getting my bachelor's degree in mass communications with the track in broadcasting. I have 6 videos on there that you can view for your pleasure. If you want to view them, that's up to you. And if you want to shoot me a follow on YouTube, then you're more than welcome to do so.
And I know you told me before we went live that this was always been your dream to do a show like this. And man, it's awesome. It's awesome talking sports. And these 2.5 hours flew by so fast. Man, it was a great time having you on tonight, being on your first show. And like I said, we will be back next week as week 1 will officially begin with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the defending Super Bowl champions, taking on Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. And we will preview week 1 in the NFL and give us our thoughts on the games that are to come for the NFL week 1. And for Joey, for myself, Stephen Wonder Wyand, thank you for tuning in to another edition of our Nation Sports Show. Take care, everybody, and we will see you next week. Have a great weekend of wrestling because, man, it's going to be awesome. AEW All Out this Sunday. Have a great weekend, guys. A great weekend, guys. And we will see you next week for another edition of our Nation's Sports Show. Peace.